The rain had already started by the time Claire pulled into the driveway of Willow House. The familiar crunch of gravel under her tires made her chest tighten. It had been 10 years since she'd last been here. 10 years since she'd sworn never to return. The house stood at the very edge of the cliff, overlooking the restless ocean that churned gray under the late autumn sky. Paint peeled from the shutters in long, curling strips, and ivy clung stubbornly to the porch railings, as if trying to hold the structure in place against the salt winds. Claire remembered the summers when the house had seemed alive. Flowers blooming in the window boxes, laughter spilling from the porch. Now it felt like a faded photograph. She sat in the car for a moment, listening to the rain drumming on the roof. A part of her hoped she might wake up somewhere else entirely, far from this damp driveway and the ghosts it carried. But the smell of the ocean air drew her back into the present. She opened the door, stepped out into the rain, and walked up the porch steps. Inside, the air was heavy with dust and something older, the kind of musty scent that clung to abandoned rooms. Claire set her suitcase down in the hallway, the faded runner rug muffling the sound. The walls still held the family portraits. Her father in his fisherman's coat, her mother in that pale blue dress she always wore on Sundays, and 3 children, Claire, Anna, and Daniel, smiling stiffly at the camera. Her own childhood face stared back at her with wide, untroubled eyes. A creak of the front door made her turn. Claire! Her younger brother, Daniel, stepped inside, shaking the rain from his jacket. He was broader now, his beard flecked with gray, his eyes shadowed with fatigue. They hadn't spoken much since the funeral. A few brief calls, each one ending before it could become personal. "Hey," she said softly. He nodded toward the living room. "Anna's here already." She started going through Dad's desk. The living room was dim except for the pale light seeping through rain-streaked windows. Anna sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by envelopes, old receipts, and brittle photographs that seemed ready to dissolve at a touch. Her hair was pulled back loosely, and her eyes were red, from crying or from lack of sleep. Claire couldn't tell. "Claire," Anna said, her voice quiet, almost careful. Claire set her coat over the back of a chair. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the rain and the slow, steady ticking of the brass clock above the fireplace. Their father had wound it every night without fail. As children, they had listened to its heartbeat-like rhythm through the walls as they drifted to sleep. Daniel finally broke the silence. "We need to decide what to do with the place. Sell it, keep it, the lawyer's expecting an answer in 2 weeks." Claire's gaze wandered across the room. The worn armchair where her father used to read, the mantel lined with seashells he'd collected, the faint scorch mark from the Christmas when Daniel had knocked over a candle. This wasn't just a house. It was an archive of their lives. "I'm not ready to talk about selling yet," she said quietly. Anna hesitated, then reached for a stack of papers beside her and slid an envelope across the floor toward Claire. "Maybe this will help you decide." The paper was yellowed, the handwriting unfamiliar. Claire unfolded it slowly, but the first line made her breath catch. "To my children, if you are reading this, it means the truth can no longer stay buried." The clock ticked on, the rain fell harder, and for a moment, Claire could have sworn the whole house was holding its breath. Claire's fingers trembled slightly as she held the envelope, the edges soft from age. Anna watched her closely, as if bracing for the reaction. Daniel remained standing, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "Where did you find this?" Claire asked. Anna gestured toward their father's desk, an old oak piece pushed against the wall by the window. "It was in the locked drawer. I had to use the spare key from the kitchen cabinet." Claire glanced at the desk. She remembered being told as a child never to touch that drawer. Her father's voice, calm but firm, had made it sound less like a rule and more like a warning. She unfolded the letter, the paper crackling. The ink had faded but was still legible, each word written in a deliberate hand. "To my children, Claire, Anna, Daniel. If you are reading this, it means I am no longer able to explain in person. There are things about this house and about our family that I never told you. Things I kept hidden for reasons I believed were right at the time. but the truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deep you bury it. Claire stopped and looked at her siblings. This isn't in Dad's handwriting. I noticed that too, Anna said. It's a woman's writing. Neat, almost careful. Maybe it's Mom's? Daniel suggested, but his tone lacked conviction. Their mother's handwriting had been looser, more flowing. The script was precise, almost formal. Claire continued reading. You must understand that what happened here was not an accident, nor was it entirely your father's fault. The past will find its way back if you ignore it. I am asking you to really look, into the rooms you think you know. Start in the attic. That's where the truth waits. A silence settled over them after she read the last line. The rain against the glass had softened, but the ticking of the clock seemed louder, almost insistent. Daniel broke the quiet first. This is ridiculous. The attic's full of junk, old clothes, furniture, boxes of Christmas decorations. Whatever this is, it's probably some prank or, I don't know, a mistake. Anna shook her head. Why would it be locked away? Why address it to all three of us? Claire looked down at the letter again. The signature was just a single initial E. Do we even know anyone with that initial? She asked. Neither of them answered. The three of them moved to the kitchen almost out of habit. The kettle went on, and the familiar scent of brewing tea filled the air. For a moment, it felt almost normal, as if they were kids again, gathered here after school while the storm battered the windows. But the letter sat on the table between them like a fourth presence. We should check the attic, Anna said finally. Daniel groaned. In this weather, the light up there barely works, and the floorboards are unsafe. Then we'll be careful, Anna replied firmly. Unless you're afraid of what we'll find. His jaw tightened. I'm not afraid. I just think we're wasting time. Claire stayed quiet. She remembered the attic, the smell of dry wood and insulation, the way the air felt heavier the longer you stayed. She also remembered once, as a child, hearing her parents' voices drifting down from up there late at night, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. When she'd asked about it the next morning, her father had said she'd been dreaming. The wind picked up outside, rattling the old windows. Claire thought of the letter's words. The past will find its way back if you ignore it. She looked at her brother and sister. Let's go. Now. Daniel muttered something under his breath but stood. Anna grabbed the flashlight from the cupboard. Together, they made their way to the narrow hallway at the back of the house, where a small wooden door in the ceiling marked the entrance to the attic. Claire pulled the cord, and the folding ladder creaked down. A rush of cool, stale air spilled into the hall. The flashlight beam caught dust swirling in the air like tiny ghosts. Anna climbed first, her steps slow and deliberate. Claire followed, with Daniel bringing up the rear. The attic was just as she remembered. Boxes stacked to the rafters, old furniture draped in yellowed sheets, the faint sound of rain on the roof above. But there was something else too. Faint, sweet smell, like flowers. Faint but impossible to ignore. Anna shone the flashlight toward the far corner. What is that? There, against the wall, was a wooden trunk, darker than the rest of the furniture, its surface scratched and scarred. A small brass plate was fixed to the lid. The engraving was simple, but the name on it made Claire's stomach twist. Evelyn. The three of them stood in silence, the beam of Anna's flashlight fixed on the brass plate. Evelyn, Claire read aloud. The name seemed to echo in the dusty air. Daniel frowned. I don't remember anyone named Evelyn in our family. Anna crouched beside the trunk, running her fingers over the engraving. The letter was signed with an E. This can't be a coincidence. Claire's eyes darted to the corners of the attic. Shadows shifted with the swaying of the single dangling bulb, but there was no movement except for the dust dancing in the air. She felt the same tightness in her chest she'd felt walking up the driveway earlier. Only now it was sharper, more insistent. Let's open it, Anna said. Daniel stepped forward. Hold on. We don't even know if it's safe. Could be mold, or who knows what. But Anna had already found the latch. It was locked with a small brass padlock, tarnished with age. We'll need to break it, she said matter-of-factly. Daniel sighed. looking around until his eyes landed on a rusted crowbar leaning against a stack of boxes. He handed it to her without a word. The lock resisted at first, but with a sharp twist, it snapped. The sound echoed in the cramped attic, making Claire flinch. Anna lifted the lid. A puff of stale air escaped, and with it came that same faint floral scent. Stronger now, almost cloying. Inside, neatly folded, was a stack of old clothes. A cream-colored dress with delicate lace at the collar, a wool cardigan with worn elbows, a pair of leather gloves so small they must have belonged to a woman with slender hands. Beneath the clothes was a bundle of letters tied with a fraying blue ribbon. The paper was thin, the ink browned with time. Anna untied the ribbon and read the first page aloud. October 12, 1975. My dearest, I can no longer stand the silence in this house. Your father insists we keep to ourselves, that the children must never know. But I see it in their eyes already, the confusion, the fear. They hear things at night. So do I. Anna stopped, glancing at Claire. This is addressed to someone named Thomas. Our dad's name was Robert, Daniel said flatly. Claire's mind whirled. Maybe Thomas was her husband? Or our dad had a life we never knew about, Anna interrupted. The second letter was shorter, the handwriting more hurried. November 3rd, 1975. Thomas, the noises have started again. In the attic, in the walls. I asked your father about the locked room, but he became angry. More than I've ever seen him. He said Evelyn is never to be disturbed. Anna's voice caught on the last word. Evelyn. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Wait. So, this trunk belonged to Evelyn, but she's writing about Evelyn as if she's someone else? Or, Claire said slowly, Evelyn is the one writing the letters, and she's talking about herself in the third person because... She trailed off, realizing she had no reasonable way to finish that thought. Anna dug deeper into the trunk. Beneath the letters, she found a small wooden box with a brass clasp. Inside was a silver locket, tarnished but still gleaming faintly. She opened it. Inside, under a cracked pane of glass, was a photograph of a young woman with dark hair and an intense, almost unsettling gaze. She's beautiful, Anna murmured. Claire leaned closer. Something about the woman's eyes tugged at her memory. Not in the way of recognition, but as if she'd seen that same look in someone she knew. The wind moaned through the eaves, and the attic seemed to grow colder. Daniel straightened. Look, I'm all for solving family mysteries, but it's late, and we're standing around in a freezing attic digging through some dead woman's things. Can we do this tomorrow? Anna hesitated but finally nodded. Fine, but we're not done with this. They carefully placed the letters and the locket back into the trunk. Claire followed the others down the ladder, glancing back one last time. The attic looked the same as before. Boxes, dust, shadows, but now it felt different. Like something up there had been waiting for them, and now that they had touched it, it was awake. In the hallway below, Claire paused. Did you notice, she said quietly, that the letters mentioned noises? In the attic. Anna met her eyes. Yes, and if they were hearing them back in the 70s, what makes you think they ever stopped? At that moment, from somewhere above them, a faint creak echoed through the ceiling. The creak from above froze them all in place. Daniel's eyes flicked to the ceiling, his jaw tightening. Probably just the wind, he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. Anna's grip on the flashlight tightened. Wind doesn't sound like footsteps. Claire's pulse quickened. She glanced at the attic ladder, still hanging open, the shadows above looking thicker now. Every instinct told her not to go back up, yet something in the letter's words, the past will find its way back if you ignore it, gnawed at her. They decided to close the attic for the night, more from unspoken agreement than discussion. Daniel pushed the ladder up and shut the hatch with a solid click. But even after it was sealed, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that something lingered above them, listening. The evening passed in uneasy silence. They ate a late dinner in the kitchen, reheated soup, bread, and tea, but conversation stayed shallow, circling practical matters like what to do with their father's belongings. No one mentioned the trunk. No one mentioned Evelyn. It was well past midnight when Claire woke to a sound. At first, she thought it was the ocean, waves crashing against the cliff below, but then she realized it was coming from inside the house. Footsteps, slow, deliberate. She sat up in the dark, straining to hear. They seemed to move along the hallway outside her room, then stop. The boards creaked as if under weight, and a faint floral scent, the same from the attic, drifted into her room. Claire's hand hovered over her phone, but she didn't call for Anna or Daniel. Instead, she slipped out of bed and cracked her door open. The hallway was empty. Moonlight streamed through the tall window at the far end, casting pale silver across the floor. Then she saw it. Near the attic hatch, the small wooden door in the ceiling was ajar. Her stomach tightened. She knew they'd closed it. She'd watched Daniel push it shut. Before she could decide what to do, a shadow flickered across the moonlight. Tall, thin, gone in an instant. She stepped back, heart hammering. The next morning, she told Anna and Daniel what she'd seen. "Maybe you dreamed it," Daniel said, though he didn't meet her eyes. "I wasn't dreaming," Claire replied firmly. Anna's face was pale. "We should check again. The attic. All of it." Daniel sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Fine, but we're doing it in daylight." They waited until the gray afternoon light filled the house. Armed with 2 flashlights and a cautious determination, they climbed the ladder again. The attic looked as it had before. The trunk in the corner, dust motes swirling in the air. But now Claire noticed something new. A narrow door she hadn't seen the first time, half hidden behind a stack of old chairs. The wood was darker, almost blackened, the frame warped with age. A heavy iron latch held it shut. Anna pointed. "That must be the locked room from the letter." Daniel frowned. "It's barely big enough for a closet." Claire stepped closer. "Then open it." The latch was stiff but gave way with a metallic groan. The door swung inward, releasing a wave of stale, icy air. Their flashlight beams caught a narrow space lined with wooden shelves. Most were empty, but in the center sat a single object, a small rocking chair. It was child-sized, painted white, though the paint was chipped and peeling. A faded blue ribbon was tied to one armrest. Anna whispered, "Why would this be locked away?" Claire crouched to examine it, and as she did, the floor beneath her groaned. She froze, but the sound didn't come from her weight. It came from the chair. Slowly, impossibly, it began to rock. Daniel swore and stepped back. Anna's flashlight shook in her hands. The chair rocked twice more, then stopped as suddenly as it had started. No one spoke. They backed out of the room, shutting the door quickly, as if the latch alone could keep whatever was in there contained. Once they were back downstairs, Claire sat heavily in the kitchen chair. "We need to know who Evelyn was, and what happened here." Anna nodded. "And I think I know where to start, the town library. If this house has a history, it'll be there." Daniel exhaled sharply. "Fine, but if we're digging into this, we do it together." None of them noticed the faint sound coming from the ceiling above them, the creak of wood, slow and patient. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving the sky washed pale and the sea calmer. The 3 of them drove into town in Daniel's truck, the old wipers squeaking across the windshield. None of them spoke much on the way, each lost in their own thoughts. The town library sat on the corner of Main and Willow Street, a squat brick building with tall arched windows. Inside, the air smelled of paper and polish, the quiet broken only by the faint hum of the heating system. An elderly librarian looked up from her desk as they entered. "Can I help you?" she asked, peering at them over her glasses. "We're looking for old records," Anna said, "about a woman named Evelyn, possibly connected to Willow House, the one on the cliff." The librarian's expression shifted subtly. Not shock, exactly, but recognition tinged with something darker. She rose from her seat without a word and motioned for them to follow. They were led into the archives room, where tall cabinets lined the walls. The librarian pulled open a drawer marked local events, 1970 to 1980, and began flipping through folders until she found one labeled Willow House incident. She set it on the table, her hand lingering on the cover. "Not many ask about this," she said quietly. "Some things are best left alone." Claire's chest tightened. "What happened?" The librarian hesitated, then opened the folder. Inside were yellowed newspaper clippings, handwritten notes, and a black and white photograph of the house, looking almost the same as it did now, though the windows were unshuttered and the garden was alive with flowers. Anna picked up one of the articles and read aloud. October 20th, 1976, local woman missing. Evelyn Mercer, age 27, was last seen at her family's home on the Willow Cliff property late Sunday evening. Neighbors reported hearing strange noises and seeing lights in the attic. Authorities searched the grounds but found no trace of the young woman. Her disappearance remains under investigation. Daniel leaned over her shoulder. "Mercer, that's not our last name." Claire's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. "Maybe she lived there before our parents bought it." The librarian shook her head. "Your parents didn't buy the house. Robert inherited it from Evelyn's father." The words landed like a blow. "Wait," Claire said slowly. "Are you saying Evelyn was our father's sister?" The librarian gave a small nod. "Half-sister, from what I've heard. The family kept it quiet. There were disagreements, especially after Evelyn vanished. Some in town believed she left willingly. Others..." She trailed off, glancing toward the window. Anna pulled another clipping from the folder. This one was dated months later, in early 1977. Authorities have officially closed the case of Evelyn Mercer's disappearance, citing lack of evidence. The Mercer family declined further comment. Local rumors persist about a locked room in the attic and claims of unsettling sounds at night. Anna looked at Claire and Daniel. "The locked room." Daniel rubbed his forehead. "So Dad knew all along. He knew Evelyn disappeared up there, and he never told us." Claire was still staring at the photograph of Evelyn from the trunk. That intense gaze, the faint smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. A knot of unease tightened in her stomach. They spent another hour combing through the records, but there was no clear answer to what had happened. No body, no farewell note, just a sudden absence. When they finally stepped back out into the cold air, the ocean wind hit them like a wall. Claire wrapped her coat tighter around herself. "Do you believe she's dead?" Anna asked quietly as they walked to the truck. Daniel didn't answer. Claire spoke instead. "I think she never left the house." Anna turned to her. "You mean she's buried there?" Claire shook her head slowly. "No, I mean she's still there." Daniel gave a humorless laugh. "You're not seriously saying she's, what? A ghost?" Claire looked back toward the cliffs in the distance, where Willow House stood against the pale sky. "I don't know what I'm saying, but last night when I saw that shadow, it didn't feel like just the wind. And it smelled like flowers, the same flowers from the trunk. The same ones we smelled in the attic." They drove back in silence. As the truck climbed the narrow road toward the house, Claire's unease grew. The windows on the top floor caught the winter light, and for the briefest moment, she thought she saw a figure standing in one of them, watching. They returned to Willow House just as the light began to fade, the ocean darkening to steel under the winter sky. The wind had picked up again, rattling the shutters like impatient fingers. Claire felt the weight of the library's revelations pressing on her. Evelyn wasn't just a stranger from the past. She was family, and whatever had happened to her was rooted deep within these walls. Inside, the air was colder than it should have been. Claire could see her breath in the hallway. Somewhere in the distance, the brass clock ticked steadily, as if keeping time for something other than them. Anna broke the silence. "We need to open the locked room again." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "After everything we just learned? That's the last thing we should do." Claire met his gaze. "It's the only way we'll get answers. And if Evelyn's still here, in some way we owe her the truth." He didn't reply, but he didn't stop them either when they headed for the attic. The ladder groaned under their weight. When Claire emerged into the attic, the air felt heavier, thick with that floral scent. It wasn't faint now. It wrapped around them, cloying, sweet, almost suffocating. The narrow blackened door was just as they'd left it, latch closed. But Claire swore she saw it shudder slightly, as if reacting to their presence. Anna unhooked the latch. The door swung inward without resistance. The child-sized rocking chair was still in the center of the small space. But now, the blue ribbon tied to the armrest trailed across the floor, as though it had been untied and left dangling. Claire stepped forward, her flashlight beam trembling slightly. "Evelyn?" she said into the shadows, feeling absurd even as she spoke. The chair began to rock, slowly at first, then faster. Daniel swore under his breath. "We're leaving. Now." But Anna moved closer. "If you can hear us," she said softly, "we want to know what happened. We want to help." The air temperature dropped sharply. Their breath clouded in front of them. And then a whisper. It was faint, impossibly faint, but Claire heard it. A woman's voice, low and urgent. "He locked me in." Claire's throat went dry. "Who?" The voice came again, stronger now, carrying a tremor of anger and grief. "Robert." All three froze. "Our father," Anna asked, almost choking on the words. The rocking stopped abruptly. Then, in the stillness, a sound rose. The distinct, deliberate creak of footsteps moving across the attic floor, but not from them. From behind. Claire spun around, her flashlight sweeping the shadows. For a split second, she saw her, the same dark-haired woman from the locket, her eyes burning with an intensity that rooted Claire to the spot. And then she was gone, the floral scent collapsing into the cold air like a blown-out candle. Daniel grabbed the latch and slammed the door shut. "That's it. I'm not staying here another night." But Claire wasn't listening. Her mind was racing, the pieces falling into place. Evelyn locked away in this room, her disappearance never explained. Their father inheriting the house without question. They packed in silence. By nightfall, the three of them stood in the driveway, the truck loaded with their suitcases. The house loomed behind them, its windows blank, its doors closed. "Are we going to tell anyone?" Anna asked. Daniel shook his head. "Who'd believe us?" Claire glanced back one last time. In the top window, just beneath the roofline, a shadow shifted, a shape still and watching. She turned away before the urge to go back could take hold. As they drove down the cliff road, the house grew smaller in the rearview mirror, swallowed by the dark. The brass clock inside kept ticking. Somewhere in the attic, a rocking chair began to move again, slowly, patiently, as if waiting for the next visitor who dared to climb the ladder.